Hello and welcome to the HR Book Club. This is the series where we meet the authors behind the very best HR books. There's a slight departure though today because it's not necessarily a HR book, but we'll explain in due course. I'm delighted to be joined by Bev Thorogood, and we're going to be discussing her book, The Business of Menopause. Hi Bev, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks, Leon. Thanks for having me.
Good, no worries. So perhaps a perfect starting point is perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I'm Bev Thorogood. I'm the director of Foresco Training Limited. We're a specialist menopause awareness for business training provider. So I work with businesses across all sectors to raise awareness around the subject of menopause as a workplace topic. And I've been doing that for about just over 3 years now.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about what the book is about and who it's aimed at.
Certainly. So the book is aimed predominantly at working women, although in reality it's probably helpful for everybody. It's a culmination, I guess, of my own 5 years of trying to understand and research what's going on as we go through perimenopause and into menopause. There's an awful lot of confusion and conflicting information out there. So I wanted to try and pull together everything that I've learned into a book that would effectively be a guidebook, I guess, for working women so they can understand what's going on, be clear about the help that they can get and how they can access it without any of the sort of fluff and nonsense, if you like. So it's a very pragmatic guide. And the onus is on working women because about 80% of women going through their menopause are in work. And it's something that as women, we're not really taught about. So it can be very confusing. It can be very scary going through the early stages, particularly of menopause. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I wanted to bring everything together in a really easy to read format that you can kind of, I think I've invented a new word. I want it to be pick up and put downable. Is all one word, by the way. So that you can literally pick it up and take out of it what you need at that time. And it's kind of, you stick it in your desk drawer and it's always there.
Yeah. So how did it come about in terms of you actually, okay, I'm motivated to write a book. You mentioned obviously your personal experience and what you wanted to do and who it was aimed at, but how did the actual book come about? Did you approach a sort of publisher or what happened there?
No. I've probably broken every rule in the publishing book. So, I mean, it did come from my own experience. I worked for a long time for the MOD and I ended up resigning my job as a result of menopause. So I have a bit of a personal story that's come into this as well. And as a trainer, I obviously have all of the content that I deliver as a training syllabus. So the writing of the book really came about because I wanted to be able to, without sounding too, idealistic, I wanted to be able to reach more people. And there's a limit to how many people I can share the information with via a virtual or a live training. So in terms of how I went about it, I literally wrote into words what I teach. So it was very easy. I had a lot of people say, how on earth do you go about writing a book? Well, of course, it's not a fiction book, so I'm not having to create characters or plot lines or anything like that. So I literally just took the structure of my training and put that same structure into words into a book. In terms of publishing, I didn't use a publisher. I've self-published. However, latterly, I did realise that I had no idea how to typeset the book or how you actually get a book out there. I knew I wanted it to be available on more than just Amazon. You can publish directly onto Amazon, but I wanted it to be available more broadly than that. I wanted to be able to sell it through bookshops with a full ISBN. So I did bring in a typesetter in the end, near the end of sort of the publishing process. And I also have a local publisher who's helped me to get it out, got my ISBN and things sorted. But I haven't had it edited. I didn't have an editor or anything like that. I've had a few people proofread it, and I'm gutted to find now that I've read it, there is one spelling error that I've picked up. in the early pages. That will be changed when we review it. But, I had about 10 people or more proofread it, and we still missed the spelling error. But I have read some really top-class books and seen typing errors, so I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very much a kind of, self-promotion, self-publishing. So I've been amazed. It launched on Monday, on World Menopause Day, the 18th of October. And I was amazed at how much traction it's gained already. And that doesn't necessarily tell me that's an amazing book, although I hope people will think it is. It tells me that there's a need for the information that's in it, which is really reassuring, of course.
Yeah, fantastic. So, and do you have plans to write any further books on the topic? Or?
Yeah, so when I was sort of, the training that I deliver is really in three main areas. I do training delivery for female colleagues so they can understand what they're going through. I also train line managers and team leaders so they understand about menopause, and also so they can feel confident in terms of managing people as they're going through their menopause transition. And of course, menopause, whilst it may be experienced by those of us who menstruate, if I can use that word on a public forum, it's absolutely impacts everybody. So that there is a book due next year. I've given myself a 12-month window to write it, which will be the Business of Menopause, a guide for managers and team leaders. The third in the series will be, working title at the minute, but the Business of Menopause, a guide for men in the workplace. So there will be some overlap, but I think the messaging is very different. What we need to know is different for each of us. That said, I do hope managers and men won't feel the need to wait until the other books are written, because actually this one will give them a huge amount of information as well. It's just it's more targeted at working women.
Fantastic. So we always end our HR book club interviews with a HR book recommendation. Now, I don't know in terms of how much you read HR books, but if there was a book that you could recommend to a HR professional, what book would it be?
Yeah, we did talk about this, and I don't really have any HR. I'm certainly not an HR expert. I may be an expert in menopause, but not HR. I think I'd have to probably go for a book that I think has probably had the most influence on me, and that I think ties in with the subject that I talk about. And it's actually not an HR book, but it would be The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown, because I think in order to break down taboos in the workplace, whether that's menopause or any of the other many subjects that are still a bit taboo, we've got to allow ourselves to be a bit vulnerable. And with that vulnerability comes courage, I think. The two go hand in hand. So I think whether you're an HR professional, a manager, or somebody just within the workplace, if you're leading teams, allowing yourself to be a bit vulnerable is going to benefit everybody. So I think that would be my choice. And maybe not a purely HR book, but definitely one that I think would help everybody to just feel a little bit more comfortable being vulnerable.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us and talking to us about the business of menopause. And hopefully we look forward to seeing the other books coming in the future. And best wishes, obviously, with the business as well.
Thanks very much, Leon.